Any questions or comments? Too bad I don't have much of a planned itinerary for today.
Last night you spoke about if you don't know self, how do you judge self? I wonder if you might talk a bit more about
I don't remember saying that. I thought what I said was, I don't think you can judge something you haven't done it. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that keeps us immersed in self, I think, more than anything else, is a constant judgment, isn't it? Self does something and I judge it. I just told somebody just before I walked into this room, don't you understand that that is your response to the situation, period, end of paragraph. That was your response. You judged it. You got a feeling about it. You wallow in that feeling for a while, and that is your entire and complete response to the situation. I consider that to be inadequate. How about you? Did you do anything about it? Did you see a way to affect it, to maybe change it, to do anything about it at all, or did you just wallow in some lovely emotion? And of course you want credit for that, don't you? You want everyone to say, oh, how wonderful, that's great. You wallowed in an emotion for a while. I'm just so impressed. And Lord, help you. If you do something unpleasant to someone else and you refuse to wallow in an emotion about it, you are going to get attacked. I don't know if you've ever had the guts to do this. Because of course you're so willing to wallow in emotions, you may not even realize this is the case. But sometimes, just for the heck of it, when you've done something a little unpleasant with someone else, utterly refuse to wallow in emotion about it and see what they do. Don't grovel. Don't feel bad. Just sort of look at them like, yeah, what? And see if that is acceptable behavior. To refuse to wallow in emotion about it. But that is the complete and entire response. You have responded to this event. And since we all just believe in magic, that really was enough, wasn't it? All I have to do is think and feel. And I've dealt with the situation. Action apparently is not really required for human beings. Thoughts and feelings are quite enough, aren't they? If I want to get something done, all I have to do is think about getting it done. Isn't that right? I never have to do it. All I have to do is feel like I want to get it done. And I'm supposed to get credit for that, aren't I? When I thought about it, and I feel really good about it, why are you unhappy that I didn't do it? Well, I don't know, maybe I wanted it actually done. employer. I get that one a lot. I noticed this job isn't finished. Well, I know, but I was thinking about finishing it. I'm sorry, I don't feel like paying you for thinking. Because the customer ain't going to pay me for the fact that I'll go to the customer and I'll say, well, one of my employees told me that they thought about doing your job. Your invoice is in the mail. Just isn't too impressive, is it? I thought about doing your stuff. I've had a lot of feelings about it. I didn't think it was necessary to actually do it. That's our response most of the time. That constant judgment gives us the illusion that we have responded to the event, doesn't it? And we haven't. And the amazing thing is that we all feel qualified to judge. From the least to the greatest of us, whatever that means. I haven't any clue what criterion you'd use to figure out who's least and who's greatest. But nonetheless, every single human being on planet Earth, whether they have bothered to learn anything about life whatsoever or not, feels qualified to judge self and every other self and how things are working and the state of the economy and the state of everything up to whether or not God did a decent job when he made the universe. I find that quite difficult to understand. That each and every one of us is so qualified to judge. So there is a story that I heard many years ago that I'll repeat for you because I found it rather interesting and illuminating. The idea of qualified to judge. And it says that one day, a person, this was many years ago, the story, the criterion for the story doesn't make a lot of sense to us today because we don't have judges that do what's in this story today, but just accept that maybe at one point in the history of planet Earth this story made sense and try and get the story, okay? It says that a woman took her young son before the magistrate in this little village she lived in and said, I'm a widower, is it widow or, yeah, widow. And I don't have a lot of money. And my son is addicted to sugar. I can't afford it. Sugar, I guess, was tremendously expensive wherever this story takes place. And so the magistrate said, okay, come back next week and I'll give you a judgment. So she comes back next week with her son in tow and appears before him again, and he looks at her and says, no, come back next week. I need another week. So she comes back in a week. Appears before him again, and he says, come back in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks goes by. She's standing in front of him again. She says, no, come back in 3 weeks. So 3 weeks go by. She appears in front of him again. And he says, come back in a week. Another week goes by. She appears before the magistrate, and he thunders at the son. No more than 2 tablespoons of sugar a day. And the woman, a bit exasperated, says, thank you, but why the hell didn't you do that a month ago? And the magistrate says, How would I know how hard it was to kick sugar? He at least understood, I can't judge in a situation where I've never done it myself. I don't know what it would take to quit sugar. I don't know how much is acceptable when you're addicted to sugar, or what level to put it at. I need to understand this situation before I am qualified to judge. Isn't that about right? And yet you judge things that you have never even conceived of doing, like creating a universe, but you know how it should have been done. Isn't that amazing? Everything the self does, you feel qualified to judge. So what efforts have you made to understand what it would take to change that thing in self that you feel qualified to judge? That's very much like quitting sugar, isn't it? I'm addicted to such and such, and I judged myself for doing this horrible, terrible, whatever thing. Okay, put a little effort into stopping it, then judge. When you find out just how difficult it is to deal with the whole thing. Just like the magistrate in the story, huh? How did I know it was going to take me a few months to kick my own addiction to sugar? Turns out it was a little bit harder to judge than I expected. That's tough. You tell me that that isn't one of the biggest things that you're identified with most throughout the day. That most of what's going on inside your head throughout the day is constant judging. And so someone comes along and says, I recommend that you disidentify from those thoughts. And you can't do it. But truthfully, what are most of those thoughts about? Are they not judgments? Not every single one. But isn't that what most of them are, is judgments? So basically what you're saying is, I see no reason to disidentify from that. It seems perfectly reasonable to me that I am capable of judging everything constantly, all of the time. I'm qualified. Who could be better qualified? All of my judgments are fair and accurate. The world would be a better place if they listened to my judgments. There's no question about it, is there? And I actually qualified to do this thing that I'm doing day in and day out. Is there a single thing coming out of this mind as it judges that is interesting to anyone in the entire universe, including me, or is it just utter garbage? Because this is a spewing out of judgments by someone who knows nothing. Last night somebody said, what's your opinion on such and such? Unfortunately, I didn't hear that that's what they were asking, or I would have kept my mouth shut. I didn't know they were asking for an opinion. I wasn't paying enough attention, I guess. So after I answered what I thought was a question, when in fact it was a request for an opinion, then they started telling me the answer, and I just looked at them and I said, why did you ask me if you already knew? Oh, I just wanted to know your opinion. Then why are you telling me yours? I didn't want to know yours. Because of course my opinion is certainly just as weighty as yours. I know that you've actually looked into the matter, and you might actually know what you're talking about, but don't you want to hear my opinion? I don't know a damn thing on the subject. No. No, funny thing, I really don't. Because I know just how much you know about this subject. Zilch, nada, zip. You never looked into it. What do you know? Had I heard that I was being requested for an opinion, I would have ignored, which I can do these days since I'm deaf. And turn into my uncle. He used to just turn off his hearing aid whenever he got tired of us. So these days I have an excuse for just ignoring people, don't I? It's wonderful. I used to have to apologize. But that's the game, isn't it? Well, since I asked you for my opinion, of course, or for your opinion, of course you want to hear mine. And would be quite hurt if you weren't interested, huh? Even though your opinion is completely uninformed and there's nothing behind it. Because of that just constant, unexamined belief. I am qualified to judge all things, even though I have done almost none of them. If you look back over just the last hour, how many of the thoughts were about judgments? That's what you just can't disidentify from, because, not because it's hard, to be honest with you. That is not the reason why you have so much trouble disidentifying. It's because you think that it's right. You don't want to disidentify from it. These thoughts are good thoughts. Why would I want to disidentify from them? You only want to disidentify from the ones you don't like. Isn't that true? Well, look at the ones that you like. What are they? I really question the value system that's going on here. Because it appears, from having watched folks for a number of years, that what they like is the fact that they are so capable of judging everyone and everything. And I don't think you're right. I don't think you can judge a thing until you have done it yourself. And then you may have a little bit of an understanding of the subject. You know how difficult it is. You know about it. And maybe you can judge if you're stupid enough to want to. Personally, I never had the ambition to be a judge. But I suppose if I did want to be a judge, I'd kind of at least want to be qualified. What do you think? So does that clear it up? The instructions that you were given when it was talked about disidentification was do it without judgment, wasn't it? Very, very clear. Look, but do not judge, just observe. Because if you are judging, you have gone back into the self, and you are now identified. What makes you think that the real I feels qualified to judge? So perhaps if one could learn to do things without judgment, one might discover the experience of being awareness. Because awareness simply is aware. The judgments are about value in the awareness. What value does this have for me? Not for anyone else, but for me. Not whether or not somebody's wearing the right dress, or whether they combed their hair properly, or whether I approve of their looks or whatever, or whether George Bush is running the country correctly. How would I know? I've never run this country. I wouldn't have a clue what that job is like. Do you really know what that job is? I honestly don't even know what it is. It's one of the things that I found rather interesting over the years. Every time we elect a new president, I keep sitting here thinking, what is he going to do? I don't even know what his job is, really. Do you? For all I know, he just sits in an office telling other people what to do. I just don't know. I've noticed they don't seem to make many decisions. They're always dependent on somebody else to tell them what thoughts to have, so I'm not even clear on what the job is. Maybe that's the job, is to pick the right cabinet members. I don't know. So how can I judge anyone doing the job when I've never done it, and I really don't understand what the job is? Every time people want to talk politics with me, I don't know what to say because I don't even know what the heck those folks are doing. It's a waste of time talking it to me. I don't feel qualified to judge it. So I usually just beg the questions. I don't know. Leave me alone. Another interesting thing. Out of the judgments that go on all the time, how many of them are that people are doing a great job? So you get to live in this critical place, I guess, for the rest of your life because you feel qualified to make those rather unpleasant judgments about self and the rest of us, huh? Me, I'd rather do this. I'd much rather, if I'm going to judge, I'd rather do it this way. I'd rather look at what is and see if I can find something in it that I think is neat. Even if I have to dig. Just because I think it would be a lot more enjoyable than listening to the self that knows how to find fault with everything immediately without effort. Isn't that right? Constantly, it knows how to judge. I would like you to consider that, because it's getting a bit old listening to people year after year say how hard it is to disidentify folks. That is the foundation block that we build on. It's what you start with. Without it, you cannot build what we are doing. It is the foundation. So if we can't get past the frigging foundation, what are we going to do? You can try to skip it if you like, and then you know what you will build? A castle in the air. Which, if you don't know it, is a euphemism for imaginary things. Because without that foundation of disidentification, You cannot tell whether you are imagining a thing or not, or it's real. You simply cannot. You are in a hypnotic trance. You can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. They're both of equal weight to you. So you just want to know whether everything else you do is real and it happened, or you just imagined it. You'll never know. So if you kind of look at it that way, that disidentification is the foundation, it is what must be accomplished before we can start, so to speak. I think that's kind of how you build buildings. Again, I don't have a lot of experience on this, so if I'm wrong, you can just laugh at me. I don't know for sure. But I think you prepare a foundation when you're going to build a building first. Is that correct? Anybody who knows? And then you start building the building, huh? Well, if we can't get the foundation done in 5 or 10 years, something's weird's going on, isn't it? And I do wonder how much of it is because I don't want to stop judging. I like it. It makes me feel powerful. It makes me feel important. It makes me feel like I matter. Because after all, I can judge everything. I must be really something, huh? And that is the way the self feels. The self has this interesting belief that in order to judge a thing, I must be superior to it. So by judging it, I prove my superiority. And that makes me feel good. So what you are basically saying is, I do not want to walk away from the only good feeling I have, that I'm superior to the rest of you. I like being identified with those thoughts. Okay, that's fine. But you ain't gonna get no work done. Because those thoughts are worthless. You are not qualified to judge. I don't know if you'll ever be qualified to judge. And it would be amusing if we discover that when you are qualified to judge, you see no reason to, wouldn't it? So it's really just, I do believe about, not that this is so hard, I know it is, but that I don't want to. Because you're threatening to take away the only thing I've got. How do you take away something that isn't there, folks? The only thing I have is the illusion of my own superiority, and you're threatening to take that lie away from me. Boo! That's pretty weird, isn't it? It's pretty funny, isn't it? Don't take the lie of my superiority from me. Okay. Well, let death do that. But you really think you can keep it? It's a lie. Somebody's going to take it from you sooner or later. Me, I'd rather it be sooner than later. I would rather it be before death. Because you are going to lose it. It's a lie. So if you won't let anybody take it from you in life, I know who's going to take it. Grim Reaper. And you're going to be without, whether you like it or not. If I were you, I would drop it before the guy shows up and see if maybe you can live for a couple of years before he shows up. If that's your only pleasure in life, I'd recommend finding another one. Does that ring true to you? And does that seem reasonable to you, that the big one of the great pleasures in this life is that I feel superior to others? Does it seem like the way you want to live? I mean, one of the things that superiority does is separates you, doesn't it? If I'm better than all the rest of you, it's kind of hard for me to join in when you're having fun, isn't it? I'm not sure that's what I want to do, is live on the outskirts of everybody else because I'm better than them. You ever seen a city where the rich people were just sort of mixed in with everybody else? I've noticed they always have their own little district because they're better than us, at least in their own mind, aren't they? Do they mix in with us? Or do they live in their own special little part of town? That's what happens when you're better than others, isn't it? You get separated. That sounds kind of yucky, doesn't it? And then, of course, I can whine through the rest of my life that I feel separated. Any questions or comments? I know this one's sobering. But, I mean, something really is going on when people have known about disidentification for years and still keep complaining that it's too hard and they can't get it done. Okay, but then what are we going to do? Because I don't know any way to do anything else until disidentification is at least well on its way. That is where we start. We need that foundation. We need something that can at least make an effort to be objective, so that we can tell illusions from facts. So that if you ever build anything else, you'll know whether it's imagination or it's actually been done. Which is also one of the complaints I hear from folks a lot. I'm not sure I've done anything. I know. Because you never disidentified. How could you possibly know one way or the other? You cannot tell imagination from reality. And apparently you just don't want to hear that. In that hypnotic trance, you cannot tell the difference between something you've imagined and something that actually exists. They are both equally real to you. So of course you're uncertain. I'm not sure I'm buying anymore that it's too hard. For the first 3 or 4 years, I was willing to buy that. Okay, maybe it's going to take them 3 or 4 years to get this down. You know, what do I know? Which is rather interesting, because I suppose I am qualified to judge this one, eh? Having done it. But nonetheless, I'm not you. All I can judge is the degree of difficulty it was for me, not you. So fine, perhaps this is much harder than I expected. Well, wait a while. But when it's year after year after year, I start getting this sort of inkling that something is up. Like maybe they don't want to. Because I just can't believe it's this hard. That thought ever run through the head? But this is going to take away the only pleasures I have. I thought so. Okay, I don't know what to say to that. You may be right. For all the heck I know, maybe it will. I find it interesting that you're such wimps that you can't go find new pleasures. You would prefer to just sit there and whine and cry than to take a little initiative and say, well, okay, I guess I better find another pleasure. I mean, that's kind of fact number one, isn't it? That really shows you where a human being is at, doesn't it? That if a human being is about to lose something, it apparently cannot conceive that it might be able to go and find a replacement. I mean, that tells you something about the self right there, that self that you don't want to disidentify from. Well, I can certainly see why. That is just wonderful and marvelous, isn't it? Oh my, I'm going to lose something. Now I'm really screwed because I'm incapable of doing anything about it. I have sat and watched people do this. This is one of the difficulties of doing the work. I'm well aware of that. As we take away automatic behaviors, you do sort of got to replace it with some conscious ones, or you can get yourself in trouble, because that machine is working. It's goofy and messy and yada yada, but it is working. And so you do kind of got to replace its function with something, don't you? But I have sat and watched people just strip away every interest that the self has and replace it with nothing, and then wonder why they're now bored to death and have nothing to do. Because you're an idiot? It didn't occur to you that if you kept seeing every interest you had in life as an illusion, that one day you might kind of be in a mess because you'd have no interest in anything? Like you couldn't go and get a conscious interest in something to replace it? Duh. But that's the way the self is. It is purely destructive. Yes, sir.
Yesterday you were talking about the false self being so hateful and angry.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, I don't know, can you talk more about that, or can you describe why that is? What is it in the
Because
nature
it
of the
wants
false
its
self?
way. And it don't get it very damned often, does it? That one is really
so it gets
simple.
angry about it.
You better believe it. There is an incessant ongoing demand for my way, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And how often do you get that?
Okay.
So it is no surprise that the self is hateful and angry, is it? And I gotta tell you, that one's rough. That one is very difficult to see as an illusion. A dear friend of mine used to say, I want my way is the first decision made and the last one to go. out of that springs all that hatred and anger and violence. I'm not getting my way. So that one is really easy to understand. We don't notice it simply because we think that's perfectly reasonable that I should get my way. That decision has not been questioned, and almost anyone has it. Would that actually be a great thing if I got my way? Well, of course it would, because I'm superior and fit to judge all things and know everything. We just have that background underlying assumption, don't we? I'm really wise, I'm really smart, I know everything. I'm superior, I'm fit to judge all things. Of course, if I got my way, everything would be wonderful. And I'm going to ignore all the times I actually did get what I wanted and hated it and couldn't wait to get rid of it. Because that contradicts my image of me as the wisest, most wonderful being in all the universe, who, when he actually does get his way, is horrified. Think about how many times in your life that's happened. You really wanted such and such. And you stewed and fussed and worked to get such and such. And as soon as you got it, you went, ew, and then worked really, really hard to get rid of such and such. And yet you still go on believing the illusion that if you had your way, everything would be perfect and wonderful. Isn't that a hoot? Any other questions or comments?
Just assume that we've all got this general idea and are finding some, psychic space in this new world. What's next?
I don't know what psychic space means.
Well, awareness of it. That this stuff is it has a reality. It's a way to deal with a lot of it deals successfully.
If it has a reality, then why is there a what's next? I mean, this reality is so complex. Are you in a hurry to say what's next after this one? Do you actually feel you've explored all there is to explore here?
No, I don't. I don't mean that.
I know, but I don't think you're listening to me. If it's real, then it probably has infinite things to discover in it, doesn't it?
Yes.
So why is there this concern about what's next? Have you actually explored what's in front of you?
Things have changed enormously for me, and it's been the best year of my life.
I didn't ask that. I asked have you explored what's in front of you. I'm not questioning what you just said, so it doesn't matter.
Yes, this has been the best year of my life, and
It's not.
that is happening.
I believe you.
But whether you believe me or not, that's my opinion. Did I hear you correctly?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I said I believe you.
Okay.
So let's move on.
I'm interested
You don't
in it.
need to prove that to me anymore, so let's drop it. I'm asking you a question. You have adequately explored this new thing at this point? That you're so concerned about what's next? I mean, personally, I'm not ready for what's next. I haven't finished with this.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I guess I'm just interested, and I don't know in what.
Are you actually hearing me? When you look at this real thing, don't you see the infinite complexity out here, that there is lots of things to explore pretty much as an obvious thing? I mean, have you finished exploring everything there is to know about the physical reality?
Okay. I think I take your point.
Okay. What is the what's next that you're really asking me about? I mean, what is it that you want that you don't have right now?
I won't make this too long a story, but it's like, you watch an Indiana Jones movie and you think all your life there's this notion that there's this mystery out there and you're just getting an inkling of it, and there's hints of it, and you see hints everywhere, and then this thing opens up, and I'm gonna, maybe this is vulgar, but it's like Disneyland. What is this wonderland beyond?
Me cussing is vulgar. That's not vulgar.
Okay, well, but it's like, what is this mystery? I want,
Well, Disneyland
you're
has
talking
this.
about building a castle in the air.
Disneyland has this thing called an entrance. I suggest that if you want to know what Disneyland is like, you go through and stop asking that question and go look. That's what I'm having some difficulty with is, if it's real, then I'm not getting, the question does not make sense to me because it's right there, it's apparent, you're experiencing it. I don't get why there's a question of what's next. You see, that question just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it is. It's just as big and interesting as the physical reality, and there's so much to explore. I can't imagine saying what's next for quite a while. So I'm missing something here. It's not making sense to me.
I'm just trying to, shake the tree and see what can shake loose.
Okay. I have suspicions, but I'll keep them to self. Any other questions or comments?
So
Yeah.
the job is to find the illusions, and then maybe I'll discover what's real, what I really am. But first I have to discover what I'm not.
What makes you think that you won't? That we have to put that maybe in there? What would prevent that from happening, just out of curiosity?
Another illusion.
Huh?
I believe another illusion.
Okay.
Get caught in this trance.
So the rule is you remove one illusion and you're done? Okay, so there's another illusion, you get rid of that too. Maybe it's just interesting to me. I don't really have any problem with it. I just found it interesting putting it in there, like, I'll do all this stuff and maybe it'll happen. Oh, okay. I don't know what motivates others, but the self is an idiot. It's just an idiot. It doesn't know how anything works. So it can't get very much done. And most of what it's doing is fighting reality. It's not working with reality. It doesn't even know how things work. Do you understand? It doesn't have a clue about the four forces. It believes in this like I say, bull in the china shop way of doing things where you tell me where to go and I just crash through until I get there. Isn't that right? That's his conception of how to do things, isn't it? Everything to the self goes in a straight cause and effect line because it does not understand how things work. It either bulls its way through breaking everything on the route, or it meets the first little obstruction and sits down and cries and never gets anything done. It's just stupid. It doesn't understand how health works. It doesn't understand how well-being works. It doesn't understand anything. So most of what it's doing is just fighting with the way things are all the time because it knows better. It knows how everything ought to be. I'm sick of it. I don't want to do that for the rest of this life. To me, that's all the motivation that's required, is that simple perception. I am tired of fighting with everything to get anything done because I don't have a damn clue how anything works, but I've got this stupid mind that believes it does. And as a result, I do not work with things. I work against them. I fight with them until I, by force, get what I want. Is that description woefully inadequate for you? That's not true for you?
Sure, that's true.
Isn't that all the motivation I require, Reuben?
Yes.
Is that really what you want to do for the rest of your life? It's just too much work for too little reward, if you ask me. I don't want to be identified with it. It's stupid. I just don't want to be stupid for the rest of this life. One of the most remarkable stories that I ever heard was the story of Solomon. I'll never forget reading that. Where God comes to him and says, "You're going to have one thing from me. One." God seems to do that a lot in these old stories, doesn't he? But at any rate, that's how the story goes. One thing, name it. And Solomon said, "Then I'll take wisdom, for with wisdom I can get everything else myself." I read that as a young child. And I said, boy, that makes sense. I was flabbergasted at that answer. He got everything. Somebody offered him one thing, and he got it all. Now, there's an interesting fellow. I was impressed. Well, I don't quite get why we have to justify getting some wisdom. It kind of seems to me that Solomon was right, that maybe with some wisdom, I could do anything I want. And that really seems like motivation enough, reason enough to do the work. I look at the self as it is, and it's an idiot. A tedious idiot. An endlessly dull, repetitive idiot. that can't seem to conceive of anything better to do than to keep doing the same stupid stuff that didn't work the first time over and over and over again. How many times have we asked that question in these meetings? You know it doesn't work. Yeah? Then why do you do it? That's what the self does, isn't it? The same stuff that didn't work last time over and over again. Maybe with some wisdom and understanding, I could work with reality instead of demanding that everything be my way all the time. And have a much more interesting life. I might actually be able to answer questions about the mysteries of life. I know what I'm doing. I know how to get things done. Because I get that's what that question was about. It was really about, why would I be doing this? It sounded like a how question, but I have a sneaky suspicion it really was a why question. If I have a motivation, the how will kind of take care of itself. I'll just do that stuff. I won't even really be concerned about it, okay? I want to do this. I want to keep stripping away these illusions. I want the freedom to do things myself. Because I don't think the self is doing a particularly good job. And sometimes I'm not sure that you share that point of view. I didn't believe you shared it last night when you got so pissed at me for pointing out that the self was doing a shitty job. I don't think you shared that point of view. There was just anger that anyone would find what I was doing inadequate, wasn't there? Sometimes I just don't get the feeling you share that point of view. You think you're doing just fine, you have a couple little problems to fix. As far as I can tell, the self is just flawed. It's based on an invalid premise, is what I mean by that, okay? And it built all of its knowledge and understanding on that invalid premise, which means the whole thing is wrong. And it is not working very well. That's about the only motivation I need. I would like to do something with this life. And I don't see how I can with the self. I'd be willing to strip away all the illusions that I could possibly find just to see what happens. It's probably about lunchtime, isn't it? Not really. Almost. We must have lunch precisely at 12. But I do think it's about time for a break. Are you hungry? If you're not hungry, we can go on a little bit longer. You're hungry? You're not hungry?
I'm not.
Okay. Anybody here like starving? There's no point in breaking for lunch just because I'm lazy. Any other questions or comments? It's about 11:30. I got started late today, which is okay because I don't have much to say today. other thing that I wanted to point out about what we talked about yesterday. I would find it interesting if some folks took up this challenge. I think I'll decide not to expect it. Any other questions or comments? I may be misquoting. I'm getting bored with memory of things I've read. So I often misquote them, I notice these days. But I believe it was that Gurdjieff said something along the lines of, nobody's going to do anything until they see the terror of the situation they're in. You don't want to do that, do you? You want to be all nice and warm and cozy and fuzzy. So you wrap yourself back in the illusion and don't see where you are. You live in an idiot. They can't think of anything better to do than to find a way to be superior and judge all things and then fight with reality that it refuses to understand and demands be according to its illusion. That's where you are. And you think it's a little bit too much work to move. So you go back to sleep. It would be really neat if you'd open your eyes and see where you are, and maybe you'd have all the motivation you could possibly want to get